Okay, let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Kinda.
Got it. Musicians at our finest.
Bass player and guitar player. But yeah, what's up, guys? I'm here with Casey Edwards. What's up, Casey?
Hey.
So, for those of you who live under a rock, Casey is the guy who made one of the, in my opinion, the best pieces of video game music this year. Bury the Light from Devil May Cry. He also made Devil Trigger, but you guys may know him for those two songs, but this man is way more than just that. Way more talented. His music skills and genres are way more wide than you would imagine. And I wanted to get him on the show to talk a bit about that, talk a bit about his experience working in DMC, and maybe ask him some music production questions, because I'm a music producer as well and have questions for him that I'm like, I wonder about stuff like, why does your bass sound like a dog barking, for example, and stuff. Like, how can you make it sound so aggressive and blah, blah. So that's what you signed up for if you clicked on this video. I'm going to start asking you some questions that the fans asked.
Sure. I will say, because I did read a few of the questions, and I think it's important for maybe some of your listeners to know that I do not wish or want to write or rewrite Dante's theme. I 100% appreciate Cody's hard work and effort. He did a great job. I know there was a little bit of some bad PR around it that was definitely not related to him in any way whatsoever. And he did a great job. I mean, whenever you hear that I am Omega, you cannot kill me, dude, it's fucking awesome. I have no desire to want to rewrite that. It's so good already. I wish people would give him the credit he deserves, because it's a fucking banger. I
don't like when people pick sides like that. When they're like, there's one thing that people do sometimes. They say, oh, your music is so good. And then they follow with, it's better than that other musician. I'm like, oh no, why? Yeah. Like, why do you have to create enmity between musicians? Like, creativity is cool because everyone has something to say and everything is pressure and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we coexist. Also, I think it's pretty funny. He definitely destroyed me in an award show. He wrote, Devil Trigger was up for something really cool. And then at the same time, his award was up for the same award, or his song was up for the same award. It was the Saudade thing that he did for Resident Evil 2. And he won, right, and rightfully so. He's a great composer in his own right. We coexist. We do not butt heads. Cody and I are friends.
That's a great point of view, and I wish people understood that more. How did you get the gig of working on Devil May Cry 5? I know you worked on Doom, on Killer Instinct with Mick Gordon and Doom Eternal and stuff like that. But is that correlated? Like getting the gig on DMC, did that happen because of your previous work on Killer Instinct? Or how did it go?
It's kind of yes and no is the answer to that. I say yes because working with Mick Gordon prepared me, like physically prepared me to be ready to deliver at that level. I was already striving to know how to be ready like that, but man, you don't really know until somebody throws you in the fire.
I'm not afraid of that. Like, I still haven't done my big video game soundtrack gig, but I'm like, that's going to cost me something.
Yeah, my getting the job was a little bit more serendipitous than that. I had just moved to LA, and one of the rules that me and Ali had when we first moved here was that if somebody invites us to something, we're going to show up. We didn't want to be hermits, because it's so easy when you're a composer to just be comfortable with staying at home all the time. You don't really need to go out, but at the same time, you need to go out. You need to meet people who are making the things that you wish to work on. People need to know you exist. It doesn't matter if you're a John Williams level orchestral composer. If literally nobody out in the world knows that you write orchestral music, what good is that craft? So that segues into my next point. We were invited to something simple. A composer from out of town was coming in for a lunch, and a few of us were getting together to go meet him. So we go and meet him, and it turns out the composer and I started talking about programming. It's sort of like I do KSB programming for Contact is one of my side hustles back in the day, and I still do it to this day with some of my friends. Like we talked about Jasper Blanc with Performance Samples. And he was talking to me about WISE, which is music video game implementation, the reason we can do dynamic songs and dynamic scores for video games. And he was like, I have a friend who might need your help on something. They're making a custom instrument for a company, and I'll send you in touch. It turned out that the person he was putting me in touch with was my now agent, who was working with Capcom on Resident Evil 7, and I helped build them a custom software synth inside of Contact.
People might not know this. Sorry I'm interrupting, but I know there's people watching right now, they're like, why is Contact are they talking about? I thought Dante, Virgil. No, well, Contact is an instrument people use to essentially, like, you play the sound of a real orchestra in your computer through these libraries that are collections of recordings of people who recorded the actual orchestra note by note, instrument by instrument, that they programmed it in a way that you can play it on your keyboard and it sounds realistic. That's why when you hear some soundtracks that made on computer, they sound super realistic because they are real orchestras. And yeah, Casey works on that stuff. That's dope. So you work on instruments like that for Resident Evil 7.
Yeah. And so essentially all I did was establish with someone who can get me jobs that I deliver on time, I'm easy to work with, and that's pretty much the only two things, and deliver on budget. I'd say those three things. Don't be an asshole, don't cost people a lot of money, and deliver good quality. You're going to get a job eventually. Again, you just have to put yourself out there. And again, I put myself in a sort of a serendipitous moment to be not discovered, but, someone knew who I was now. Yeah. And that led to eventually one day to me getting a phone call and being like, hey, do you know what Devil May Cry is? And my head exploded. And I also had like 10 heart attacks at the same time.
I can imagine. You grew up playing the game, right?
Yeah, no, I've told the story a few times, but I remember back in 2001 when the game came out, again, not to age myself too much here, but my mom rented the game for me at Blockbuster.
Wow.
So, yeah, I still have very vivid memories of playing 1 and 2.
What did you say when you told her, hey, or you told your parents or your friends, I'm making a song for Devil May Cry? What was the reaction from your friends and family?
I mean, my mom really didn't have any idea what I was talking about, but my parents have been super supportive from day one. Like, I think I told her, I was like, Mom, you rented this game for me a long time ago, and now I'm writing music for it. And she's like, that's awesome, She already knew that we were working on like Killer Instinct and stuff back in the day, so she had been getting that slow fade into to us having a career in the thing. It's funny, I actually remember having the first conversation about music with my mom. Like I said, my mom and dad have always supported me. They come out, watch me play at bars since I was a teenager, playing guitar on stage in front of people and just having a good time. And I remember being like, Mom, I'm going to do music for a career. And most people, that conversation is very difficult to have, as it should be. It's a scary thing to say to somebody. But she sternly looked at me and she said, are you sure? And I was like, yep. And that was it. So... thanks, Mom.
That's very impressive. Like she sounds amazing. Like parents usually don't have that degree of confidence in their children or in the world. They're kind of afraid, and that was my parents. But when you have supportive parents, that's pretty amazing. So I'm very happy for you.
Yeah. Thanks. And to be honest, I would have that same conversation with anybody who would talk to me. I had the same conversation with my professors in college. There was a lot of "Are you sure?" moments, and you kind of have to really light a fire under your own ass to get that to happen. No one's going to make it happen for you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have some advice actually for people who are just starting out? Like, if you could go back in the past and you meet the Casey of those years and you're just starting out, what advice do you have for him in terms of like making it as a musician?
Man, I already made a lot of early sacrifices. I didn't go to a lot of parties. I didn't go out to a lot of outings because I was so enthralled with the idea of being a better producer or a better composer. I was so enveloped in that whole world. I think the only thing I would do is tell myself to work for somebody sooner. I wish I had met a Mick Gordon 5 years sooner. I didn't get to work with Mick until 2013.
How did you guys meet at all?
Twitter, of all things.
What?
Mick used to be, I think he might still be to a certain degree, but Mick used to be very active about reaching out to nobodies on Twitter. Hey, I'm looking for this. Hey, I'm looking for that. And one day he posted, hey, I'm looking for a female vocalist. I was like, I'm going to DM him. Like I typed in the thing, he sent me a DM, and then we ended up emailing back and forth. And that's what became Orchid's theme. That's how I got Allie involved in that to begin with, and she crushed it. It's so funny. I always make the joke, I had been trying for years, like 10 years at this point, to break into video games. I have my wife now. We've been married for like a year. First introduction into video games, wins an award, gets a first
actually,
a first place.
That's pretty cool, though. Like, I really like that dynamic between you guys. Like, it seems like you guys are a team. For what I've seen, it sounds like you're her biggest fan and biggest supporter, which is
I
amazing.
think we support each other.
Yeah. It's awesome to see, and she's great.
Yeah.
She's freaking awesome.
Of course.
You guys are awesome together. Like that freaking Devil Trigger made people go like, oh my God. Did she play Devil May Cry as well? Like, is she a fan or did you?
So she's played a lot of Bayonetta, but she has not yet got to play Devil May Cry. I think she watched her brother play it when she was younger, but she hasn't had a chance to play it yet, or the fifth one, because the way things have happened over the years, we keep getting busy, and then the game came in and she watched me play it But then by the time I was done, we all got too busy again to play.
Oh yeah, that's how it is.
But soon, she's going to play it. She's been telling me for years that she's wanting to play it. So
Yeah,
I think we're going to be jumping in here in the next few months.
She defined the vibe of the whole Nero section of the story. Like her vocals are just amazing. Like very fitting, I think. I made a video about this and I really like those. And people love them as well.
For Devil Trigger, there's this thing inside of me, and I know you talked about this earlier. You said you're still waiting for someone to call you and have that moment, and you have the heart attacks and all that stuff. I remember getting that phone call, and I remember we had worked with Mick and Ali and myself. There was always sort of like a team involvement there. I felt this, I don't know why, I felt this need that I needed to do it by myself. So when I sat down to write Devil Trigger, I produced and wrote the whole song by myself. I wrote all the lyrics by myself, and I had this very clear vision. But it really didn't start to come together until I brought Allie in. She could hear me working on this stuff, and I would have her come in every now and again to sort of like help me iron out some parts. Like, hey, could you sing this? And she'd sing like, okay, stop, that's terrible. I wrote a bad thing. Give me a second. But then the song started taking shape when I'd be like, could you improv this part a little bit? Could you improv this part a little bit? I feel like this part's weak. And then she would start to give me the things that she's more acute to as a vocalist. Yeah, I can't sing to save my life. I feel comfortable with everything else. Singing, no. So she would start adding inflections that only a singer might think about, or someone who has control over their voice in that way. And that's really when Devil Trigger started to come alive.
So it's when you let your wife, you left her the space to embrace her creativity.
Absolutely.
Killed it.
And I think that's important. If you're collaborating with somebody, give them some room to breathe.
Dude, like I wonder about this a lot. Like it seems with Bury the Light that you were able to kind of do whatever the fuck you wanted to do. Like it sounds like an arrangement where you blended so many genres and you added so many things. Like you have freaking metal guitars that sound huge, that bass that is so nasty. Then you have a violin. Then you have like the vocals from Victor. And it sounds like you gave it your all there. And was it your choice to make it as grandiose and ambitious, or was it Capcom asking you? Because I know that sometimes with video games, you're giving briefings and they want a specific sound. And even though you're able to do whatever, you have to do this very tiny thing. But with Bury the Light, it doesn't sound like it was like.
So I would say Devil Trigger was more born in the light of kind of do whatever. I felt like they were really just kind of looking at me to try and find that sound. They had some ideas, but the ideas were very limited. They said pop and rock. And they gave me a few adjectives, like, Nero's young and brash and stupid and those kind of things. And that sort of gave me the ideas for the way the song came out. For Bury the Light, they had a lot more in mind for that. They sent me maybe about 10 example tracks all over the place. We're talking about anything from 1992 Pantera to like 2010 EDM rock stuff that I've never heard in my entire life. And I'm sitting here taking all this in, and I'm just like, yeah, like maybe like a millisecond of this song is Virgil, but what is this? Like I was trying to understand what they were trying to show me. And in my mind, I was just transcribing this in my head as I think they really just want to make sure that these little elements that you can pull from Devil May Cry or Virgil's personality are put into this whole thing as one big picture. So I had to just completely ignore now all of these references. They made their point. They wanted a big chorus. They wanted, one of the things early on was no distortion guitar was allowed anywhere but the chorus.
Damn.
And at first, I hated that. I hated that limitation.
Yeah,
because to me, I wanted to make like the most badass metal song. And how can I do that without guitars in the verses?
I mean,
and all these other sections?
Your core strength as a composer, right? Like for you, like what do you think is your biggest? Like you can do whatever. You can do orchestra, you can do guitars, you can play piano. But what do you think is your number one asset as a composer, your super skill? Is it guitar?
It's definitely the instrument I'm the best at. I can touch on that in a little bit, but it's hard to say because I used to play a lot of guitar and a lot of metal and stuff like that. I was into like Dream Theater. I was practicing sweep picking and economy picking and all these crazy guitar techniques. And then I got to college and I focused super hardcore on orchestral composing.
Oh, damn.
It was a very traditional like piano, pencil, paper, full score. I have scores and scores of paper behind me with notes all over them. So I don't know. It feels pretty 50-50 to me these days. Okay, I feel comfortable with both.
So you were saying they told you, hey, no guitars.
Yeah, it's sort of like harkened back to me. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Mick Gordon's GDC chat where he was talking about Doom and they told him no guitars in the whole score at all.
Really?
Like, Yeah. So the first Doom. If anybody hasn't seen it, please go watch Mick's GDC chat about Doom. He's got more charisma than anybody I've ever met in my entire life, and he also does a great job at explaining kind of the walls you have to hurdle over in this industry as a composer.
That's insane. Like, then he wrote BFG Division like as a fuck you. Like,
right.
Damn. Okay.
Well, yeah, he explains it pretty well, but I think it sort of harkens to the same thing that I'm trying to get at here. Is eventually you were able to come to a wall where it gave you a limitation, and through that creative limitation, you were able to come up with something different. And then he married those two ideas together. So if someone hadn't told me no guitars in the verses, I wouldn't have had that. Well, fine, I'm just going to make the biggest bass you've ever heard, and I don't care. That's where that idea came from. I was kind of, I don't want to say upset, but you know, when you're sort of like, well, what am I going to do then? And then I was just like, well, I'm just going to come up with like the biggest bass sound that's just going to sound as gnarly as a guitar anyways. What are they going to, it's synthetic,
they challenge you. I think like that's where creativity breeds, from challenge sometimes. You know, when you can do everything, you don't know where to start, you don't know what to do. But if they give you a limitation, then you find ways, you know? Like, I think of gamers that find ways to make games challenging, and they enjoy it more. Like, oh, I'm going to play DMC, and I'm never going to be hit by an enemy. And if I do, I reset the whole game. Holy shit. But then they have a lot of fun with that, and they discover new ways to play.
Yeah, they had a bigger hand in guiding this track than they did in Devil Trigger. Devil Trigger, I was sort of like, what do you think about this? They're like, sounds great. What do you think about this? That's cool too. With Bury the Light, I was already stressed out on my own, because to me, Virgil, he means a lot to me personally as a character, and he has a lot more lore invested in this storyline so far than Nero did. So there was a lot to represent. I mean, he's emo, he's angsty, he's sad. I feel like there's so many things you can pull out of Virgil's storyline. So I was like writing down just tons and tons of lyrics, going on a lot of walks, just trying to not even be around music at all when I first started this song, to come up with some sort of direction. And I have told people, I think a few times, that I wrote this song mostly on piano before I even touched production. It was very important to me that I have a melodic and harmonic structure of some kind before I started.
I can definitely hear that in the music. Like, it sounds... If you orchestrated it into like an orchestral suite or something, it could come out freaking amazingly. Like, there's so much storytelling in the music. It's not usual chord progression that plays the same things all over and over, but it kind of changes throughout. There's so many different passages and zones. It's like, for me, it feels like 3 different songs put together into one, or 3 different acts or something. And fans have recognized, like, people were asking about first, like, what symbolism you try to add in the lyrics. But I wanted to know also, like, fans wanted to know if the references to like Devils Never Cry and Devil Trigger were intentional. Of course, I mean, I think they were, right? Like
Yeah.
Did you decide to add them, or was it again Capcom telling you?
So I'm glad you asked, because I definitely wanted to talk about this. I've mentioned it in a few of my tweets and a few Reddit posts, I think maybe even. But Devil Trigger, 100% yes. I mean, like, as soon as you hear the Bury the Light, da 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 da, I mean, it's the exact same motif from Devil Trigger. And I remember when Allie heard that for the first time, she was like, I don't know. Some people might think you're being lazy.
No way. People fucking love it. You know, they love to hear, because it tells a story.
Yeah. I started to explain that to her in the way that I'd hope to one day explain it to fans. Of like, no, to me, this is a separate third act. Like, we've already had, like, at this point, I think the song was at like 6 minutes. I'm like, we already have a song. I could ship this and it'd be done. I'm not happy yet. Something else needs to happen here. Something about Virgil I've not yet described, and I need to get that out. So to me, this was more of a personal vendetta. I think Capcom would have already been happy with what I had done. Yeah. They had a song. But I was like, no, I have to do this for 2 reasons. One, I need to be able to represent Virgil the best way that I can possibly imagine. And I don't know if I'm ever going to write for DMC ever again. Capcom has this really rich history of bringing in new talent for almost each iteration of Devil May Cry. And I really like that. I really respect that. So for me, it was sort of, I needed to represent Virgil, and 2, I might need to say bye to DMC in some way. So to me, that big ending where you get the Devil Trigger reprise, and you get I think more of a penultimate feeling of how to sum up Virgil with those last few lyrics. To me, that was just sort of a personal thing. That
sounds like that. Now that part sounds even more epic. I think already that was probably people's favorite part in the song. Although you see all the I am the storm that is approaching memes I think the devil, like when I made the video about the song, and I skipped that part because I was already like, that was the first time I ever listened to the song. And I kept on noticing things. And when I notice things in my videos, I just say it and I nerd it out very, very. I even stopped the video at a certain point and I wrote a Castlevania arrangement of a certain part of the song, blah, blah. And then it kept on increasing and getting better and better and better. And there was a point where I was like, okay, like it's too much for me. Like it's too awesome for me. Like, so I need to cut the video. And I was like, yeah, it's done. Like, it's Casey, you won, that's it. And people in the comments were like, no, you stopped right the part where the Devil Trigger solo began. I'm like, there's a Devil Trigger solo, so I listened to it again. And I'm like, oh shit, he did it, you know? And people fucking love that part because the people feel amazing when they can recognize like a melody or something that a composer did. Because they feel, oh, wow, I'm so smart because I understood that by myself. And also they sense that the composer really cares about the game because it means, oh, this melody is important in the composer's heart. And hearing that you've wrote it for this reason makes it even more epic. So I think people are going to lose their shit when they see it, when they hear this answer. So that's great. Now I wanted to ask you about Devils Never Cry instead.
Yeah, so that's the hard one to say because I definitely did not reference that. And on purpose, I didn't reference anything but Devil Trigger. And I plan on explaining this a little bit more in my live stream when I can play chords and stuff for people to explain them and help them understand how I arrived at this thing that I went back and listened to it, by the way, Devils Never Cry. And I was like, oh, I see what they hear. They hear the open fifth and then the 4 chord. I hear it. So essentially what was going on in my brain there, the very first thing that I wrote was this chord progression, which is D minor, E fully diminished 7th, C minor to G minor. And it was meant to be very Baroque and Gothic sounding. Not Baroque classically, but just sort of like Gothic. And so when I arrived at this, that is the exact same chord progression that's used in the verses. That's also the exact same chord progression that's under the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You don't really hear it because of the way the melody is inflected on top of it. It doesn't sound like the same part at all. And then when I got to the bridge, I was like, well, I want to do something different for the soundtrack version. I did the same thing for Devil Trigger. Devil Trigger had a slower bridge breakdown that you just can't put in game. When you're fighting somebody, you can't slow the song down that much. It doesn't feel right. So I separated that into 2 versions. You have the in-game version, which keeps the beat up. It gives you those sections. And then you have, I think, a more dynamically fun version to listen to for the soundtrack. And then I was thinking I wanted Victor to sing sort of high like Muse. I love Muse. I love Matthew Bellamy's voice. He's so good.
Hell yeah, man.
So
preach it.
To me, that's where the falsetto came in. You know, so to me, that melody was just born out of the chord progression. I wasn't thinking about Devils Never Cry or anything like that. I was just thinking, okay, I need to take this like Gothic chord progression. I want to place it here. I want to do it a little bit differently with the strings and everything. And I want Victor to have these 2 opposing lines. I want the sort of demonic underneath, the human on top. So to me, that's Virgil and Dante's.
Well, that's what I felt. I didn't play DMC3 ever. I played the first one. I played the second one for like 3 hours, and then I played 5. And DMC Reboot. I didn't know so much about Virgil. But I was like, yeah, that sounds like what he's trying to do is representing like a demonic side and a more like holy side in this section. Like it sounded like there's conflict. And, you know, it was a very interesting duality. Victor did a freaking insane job, by the way. How did you get him on the gig? Like, were you guys friends or what's the story of how Victor got the gig?
So I got the call that they wanted me to do Virgil again. 50 heart attacks, sweat, all this stuff happens immediately, especially when I heard the word Virgil. Man, I was so happy though. Anyways, the first thing that came to my mind is, shit, I have to write music now and it can't suck. Like I was so stressed out. And then the next thing was, I got to find a vocalist. Like oh my God, who's going to sing this? And I started thinking about what I wanted and I was like, man, this is so much. I'm thinking like these high parts and then screams, like it has to have some metal. That was one of the other limitations, by the way, early on. They told me no screaming.
Damn.
So I was like, we'll see. Yeah. So I particularly the first thing I wrote in my mind, I remember going for a walk and I came up with the whole, my family crest is a demon of death thing. And I was like, it's kind of cheesy, but I think if we do it the right way, I might be able to deliver that line where it feels a little egocentric. And I think Virgil's got a lot of that inside of him.
I just imagine you going on a walk. people walking around you like, hey, what's up? And you're like, my band requested.
No, I probably looked insane.
Okay, but it works very well.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about all these different parts and the amount of dynamic contrast in the vocals alone that I need. I'm like, well, here we go. So I go into YouTube and I just start searching for covers. And then I found some of Victor's covers of Periphery songs. I'm like, oh, Periphery, that's actually a great way to start for covers. Yeah, because he's got screams, he's got some really tender parts. So I start sifting through some of Victor's stuff, and I was like, I found some really interesting, like some Japanese anime covers that he did where it's like really high, beautiful falsetto. And then I'd switch over to a Periphery cover he did, and it's just like the most gut-wrenching metal screams you've ever heard. I'm just like, well, yeah, this is the guy. This is
the right amount of bipolar vocals.
Yeah, no, I needed that range, and he's got an incredible range. Like he can sing up to that high D, no problem. And he can sing pretty low too.
Yeah, that like the way he sang is very surprising. Like that's the thing that shocked me in the video. I was like, he can do whatever he wants with his voice. You know, like how?
Yeah, I wish I had that power.
Same.
Yeah,
but I mean, you have the power of being a composer.
Yeah, we did everything remote, not just because of the pandemic or anything like that, but just because he lives up the East Coast, up in Canada. I live all the way down in Los Angeles in Southern California on the West Coast. So we're working on this song. I don't think he's played Devil May Cry yet, but he knows about them. I think he's actually one of the best Smash players in Canada, so he knows about Capcom and all this stuff. Yeah. He's good at a lot of stuff. So I get to writing the song, and he's getting these really awful demos. I'm singing. It's like piano only or just really, really rough production. He's probably like, what in the hell did I just sign up for? And I'm asking him for the most insane stuff. I'm like, could you sing this part high? Could you sing this low? And he's sending me like Batman rumble vocals and mid vocals and high. And I'm like mixing them in weird ways and putting them in this track. And he's hearing it all come together. And I remember like 2 weeks later, I sent him the first demo, and he was like, oh, that's the song. It's pretty funny. Because at this point, I'm literally just being like, constellations of blood pure. I'm singing like really cringy into the mic and trying to give him like these demos of what I'm looking for. And then he sends me the version that sounds way better.
Yeah.
And I'm nitpicking everything. I'm like, don't breathe here. No, don't breathe there. You can't, no, you have to sing it like this. And then he's probably just like, what did I sign up for? But then as things started... Yeah, but things started to come together, and I think he started to see the layout of the song. And just to say, call back to what I talked about earlier, I think you should always give people you collaborate with a little bit of room to breathe. I felt a little bit more restricted in that just because we're working on serving Capcom, not me. I'm not trying to serve myself. I'm trying to serve Virgil at this moment. So I did have a lot of specific things I wanted him to do, but he added in some really, really nice stuff that I didn't ask for. You mentioned in your video the slides. Da, 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 da. Yeah. I didn't ask for that. My version was really blocky. Da, 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 da,
I'm so glad that he added those, because I find when you make music, it's the small details that really make the songs. For me, like when I release a song, many times for me, I'm like, okay, this like 2 minutes and a half suck, but this passage right here is where the sauce is, and I want people to listen to the sauce. So I'm going to publish 3 minutes of shit so they can listen to those 30 seconds. That's kind of how it feels to me for my music.
Yeah.
So when I hear those details, I'm like, obviously Bird's Light is all fucking amazing in every way. But those details really added even more, in my opinion, to the song.
Yeah, he added a great turn in the bridge section too. I can't remember exactly, but it was like... Crimson Joy. Like he does like that kind of stuff in the name. Like I didn't ask him to do the turn there.
Man.
My version just went like name, like I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like I'd keep that. Like don't change that.
It's completely motivated. That's what people would say. People were asking you about actually, what was the thing that motivated? What's the thing that inspired you to start making music? And how did you start? So you said you started by playing in bands, but why? What's the reason?
I'd say when you try to like reverse analyze your life a little bit, and you try to find that moment, that one nugget, where the light bulb came on at some point in your life. I think the furthest back I can take that is I remember having emotional reactions to watching movies, like crying as a kid, watching like Titanic or something, and hearing James Horner's beautiful score, or Danny Elfman's Ice Dance and Edward Scissorhands when I was a kid. I was like, it was moving me and I didn't understand it. When you're that young, you just don't get it. Then I ended up playing trumpet in band as a younger kid and realizing that I really, really loved playing some of the music that we were getting to do. Some of it was like middle school versions of film music, and some of it was classical music. And then I quit that altogether in 10th grade to learn how to play guitar. And then I was doing, probably the same thing everybody does when they start, trying to learn how to play Smoke on the Water and Stairway to Heaven, all the cringy guitar store stuff.
That's what people do.
And then I discovered Dream Theater and Symphony X and all these crazy prog metal bands, and my head exploded. And I was like, holy shit, what is this? I have to learn how to play it all. So that's when I started getting more involved in technical prowess for the sake of technical prowess. I didn't really still understand yet musically what I was trying to do. It started to come together a little bit later when I was graduating high school, and then I went to college, and college was the first time that I really started to internalize what it meant to be a musician, not just a composer. I started attending these master classes for piano performance, and I was listening to the way that the teacher was talking to the student on stage, and it just blew my mind. I'd never heard someone talk about music like this before. So that was when the clock really started to tick and turn. Before, it was mostly just emotional reactions, but at that point, I was like, oh man, there's I know nothing. It's like the whole Dunning-Kruger effect. If you've ever seen that bell curve, it's like the more you know versus what you think
definitely.
you know. Yeah. When I hit college, I immediately fell off that slope. I was back at the bottom. I felt like, oh man, I'm getting better at guitar. I understand where arpeggios are, all this music. And then I was like, oh, I know nothing.
That's what I feel when I listen to freaking Bury the Light. After having been a composer for 7 years, oh, okay, I started to get music. Nope, no, you don't. Do you? I suppose working at the levels you work now, probably you still feel that. Do you sometimes feel imposter syndrome? You're like, oh shit, there's people out there who really know their stuff, and I'm like, yeah. How do you deal with that? Because you have to push through that, right? What is your method to shut that thing up and just be like, fuck you, I'm gonna do it anyway?
Deadlines. I'm 100% serious. Deadlines. I don't want to let Capcom down. I don't want to let the fans down. Those are equally important to me. In order to keep the job, I have to keep Capcom happy. In order for them to hire me again, I have to keep Capcom happy. In order for anybody to want to listen to my music again, I have to keep the fans happy.
So you feel that Bury the Light is this is uncomfortable question. You can also no reply, but personally speaking, when you hear Bury the Light, do you hear mistakes somewhere, in the composition? Do you feel parts? Do you feel like, oh, this is perfect? Or do you feel like, oh, I could have done that thing better. It's nice, but yeah. How do you feel?
Yeah, there's definitely sections I wish I could go back and change.
Yeah.
Some of the lyrics too. There's especially one part in the, I forget the exact thing, but right before the My Family Crest is a Demon of Death, there's a slight rhyme in there I wish I would have changed. I know it's a really stupid thing. I just wanted to change one word.
Flames, I have been blessed. That's that one?
Yeah, Born in Flames. That's the line I wish I could change.
Man, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorites. So
I like it, but symmetry-wise, I'm thinking, I listen to a lot of songwriting interviews and stuff, and I love how when people try to get into the symmetry of words and meaning at the same time, and I hear Born in Flames, I have been blessed, My Family Crest is a Demon of Death, and Best, Crest, and Death are all slight rhymes. I really wish I would have changed it to Forget the Rest, I have been blessed. Then we would have had 4 slight rhymes in a row. It wouldn't have been 2 Dr. Seussy because they're all slight rhymes, and it would have had a little bit more, I think, momentum.
Damn, that's something.
These are the things that keep me up at night.
Yeah, well, you're very passionate, and it sounds like you're always gonna have things that you might want to improve on, and that's what keeps it interesting. If you ever feel like, oh, I won, I know everything, you probably not have so much fun anymore.
Yeah,
that's one thing that people need to know. When you were talking about this on Reddit the other day, I saw it. When someone does something and that makes them successful, say Mick Gordon does BFG Division and Doom, All Day Fear Is You, blah blah, and everyone loves it. People start to expect that composer to keep on doing stuff that same way. But if one keeps on doing the same shit over and over, even though the audience may be happy about it, creativity kind of dies. There's no challenge anymore, and you don't really feel compelled to do it anymore. And then people also eventually gonna get tired of it. And when the new thing comes on, they're like, oh my God, this sounds so much better than that guy. And it's and that guy's you asked me to do this forever. Now I did it and you're not happy anymore. So
yeah,
it's important for people, I think, to understand that composers especially should have the freedom to just experiment and do whatever the hell they want. Sometimes I listen to your tracks on Twitter. There's one, what's called Lost Hope or something. I remember there was like an ambient track that you made. It's like a super short ambient sketch.
Oh, that was for a horror film that I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That sounded so interesting to me. You know, I'm like, damn, I would like to hear more stuff like this. I still love Buried Alive and stuff, but there's so much more that you can do, which begs the question.
No, that was so fun to write too. I remember I randomly found like a major harmonic in this awful sound design thing that I remember recording this like zither or something with a bow, and it sounded like shit. But randomly in one of the bows, there was like this major harmonic. I was like, oh, that's perfect for this part of this horror film because she's literally losing hope as she thinks she's regaining it. And I was like, oh, yeah, perfect. So I started doing this weird sound design thing. I would never get that chance if someone kept being like, hey, do Devil Trigger, do Devil Trigger, do Devil Trigger.
There's so much more that you can, which I was wondering. So what is your favorite, right now, your favorite genre of music to make at the moment?
Oh, man.
Or something you wish you could do more?
That's easy because I never get asked to do classical scores much. I got the chance to do a Halloween short film called Spooky Fresh. Go check it out. It's really great. But I got a chance to revisit sort of like that John Debney, James Horner, John Williams sort of vibe from back in the 90s. Lots of Lydian scales, lots of like, it really, really angers itself on melodic motifs. And it uses those melodic motifs throughout the whole score. And it's really fun and colorful. And you just I can't do that for Virgil. It's not his character.
Yeah,
you know?
no. Well, I see that more like, in a way, kind of like Latin is this language that is like the foundation of so many other languages. It's amazing, but people don't care about it so much, but they should. You know, John Williams' sound is like the same. It's so fucking good. But people don't, they just want and I'm probably part of the problem because I used to make music for trailers, movie trailers and stuff, and I like that epic, ignorant sound. But I also like the John Williams sound. I think people should just embrace that too.
Yeah, I don't like gatekeeping.
Yeah, me
I
neither.
don't like gatekeeping in music at all. I think if you like Teddy Riley, New Jack Swing from the 90s, fucking lean into it. If you like, 90s hip hop with sine wave leads like Snoop Dogg, lean into that. If you like Salt and Pepper, lean into that. If you like James Horner, lean into that. Like anything that makes you happy. I listen to a lot of modern pop. I love Dua Lipa. I love Zedd. I love Julia Michaels. I think these guys are incredible. They're really at the top of their game, and there's no reason to gatekeep it just because it's popular.
Yeah.
These people know what they are doing, and they're doing it really, really well.
Yeah, it's not easy to write pop music at all.
No, not at all. Just because you can dilute it down to, these are 4 chords, and they're repeating these words. I'm like, great, if it's so easy, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to be that person too. And I wish that if I could go back in time, I wouldn't mess with myself who was practicing music all the time. I would slap that kid who was saying, oh, it's so easy. I would slap him so hard. It's not easy. You can music analytically you can boil it down to an easy transcription, but that does not make it simple at all.
Yeah.
It's like you could almost do the same thing with some of Mozart's sonatas and rondos. It's like they fit this form because they have to. A, B, development back to the A. And it's always going to do these modulations because that's sonata allegro form. And it's like, that doesn't make it easy. Write a melody that someone's going to be singing in 350 years. Go.
Yeah, actually. I agree completely.
I have a lot of mixed feelings about that. And I think really just if somebody enjoys something, let them enjoy it.
I think people need to hear this. Especially one thing that makes me sad sometimes is the elitism or the gatekeeping. Sometimes, I grew up listening to video game music. And man, back in the day, there was no Gilva Sunner or Silva Gunner, the YouTube channels that upload video game music. So I didn't know anyone who listened to video game music, and people, my friends and stuff, usually made fun of it. And I also grew up listening to freaking 50 Cent on television, Tupac, and rap music and blah blah. And now, if you go on a video game music forum and you talk about rap music, they're gonna make fun of you for listening to rap music. I'm like, you guys are losing so much by choosing sides. You don't have to choose a faction and just listen to that music. There's so much to experience and so many amazing artists, and I think it's very stupid to be like, oh yeah, rap music sucks. No, don't do it.
Yeah, I think some of the community itself that makes this music is to cause too, because I remember seeing an article a couple years ago about how country and rap are really bad about gatekeeping their own music. Like, oh, you're not a real country artist, or you're not a real country fan or you're not a real rap fan if. It's like, no, I can like 50 Cent or I can like Tupac for no other reason that has anything to do with your opinion.
Yeah, I think it has to do with some people feel like the genre of music you listen to defines you. Like, hey, if you listen to rap music, then you come from a hood, the hardships of black people and stuff. But you can listen to that music and not be part of a specific category to do. But I think that's probably where the problem comes. Like people are like, oh, even it's the same when you see, I don't know, girls that stream video games. Some people are like, oh, you're a girl, you shouldn't play this video game. Why? You know, like what's the point? It's like, oh, you're different. No, it's so stupid. So yeah, gatekeeping.
No, that makes me angry. Yeah, no, it's like you can't like Redman or Master P because you listen to Nelly and he's mainstream. It's like, dude, no, stop that. Or yeah, the girl thing. Like I remember like growing up a little bit and having these like outdated statements from the 90s. People used to say like, oh, you run like a girl or you throw like a girl. Yeah. And I remember getting older. I'm like, that makes no sense to me. There are Olympic athletes who could not only kick my ass, but they could outrun me. No problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're women. Yeah, it's stupid.
I think people just need to grow up. And I'm always optimistic that they will. You know, I think humans are far better now than they were like 100 years ago, for sure. And in 100 years, we're going to be better still. Hopefully. Unless we get like Cyberpunk 2077, which, man, I'm craving to play that game. Have you listened to the music?
Same. I started listening to it last night. I want to hear more of it. It sounds so good.
Man. It's incredible what they did. Like, I think it's the same composer that did The Witcher 3, plus more composers that helped him or something. And that's an example, like why, you know, you shouldn't let composers just do one thing, but you should let them do whatever, because the main theme alone, when you turn on the computer, like the game main title theme, it's so good. I'm like, holy shit. Every doubt I had about damnating the music is gone, because this theme here is so good.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. When I saw that Reddit post, the thing that triggered me the most, I'd say, is that what I saw was a list of Doom tracks and a headline that said, would you be happy or something like if Mick Gordon wrote music for DMC? Like, of course I would. Mick Gordon's an incredible composer, but it's not because of you trying to take Doom's personality and put it on the Devil May Cry, which is literally what I felt like they were trying to do. Yeah. That's not what Mick would do. Mick would talk to the creators and be like, what are you looking for? And then he would write something appropriate for that genre. That's the point I was trying to get across. Not that I'm upset because someone was trying to replace me or that someone was trying to ask if Mick was a good composer. I'm like, of course he is. That's not the point here. I just stop trying to take the identity of one game and place it on another, because that's not how we work. That's not what we're asked to do.
Man, I wish that the companies did a better job though to show this. Like, I really appreciate the Capcom lets you upload through the Light, Devil Trigger and stuff on your Spotify and stuff like that. That's pretty great. You know, like they give you the title. Like the main composer of the soundtrack, who is that? Tetsuya Shibata, like the main composer of DMC5. Who was that?
Koda Suzuki.
Okay, so they still allowed you to upload Devil Trigger and stuff as singles on your Spotify, right?
No, the way you can do it is the distributors that you can attach my artist name and it'll automatically, they still own the publishing and everything, but it attaches itself to my artist Spotify, which I still really appreciate.
Yeah, but there's some companies that don't let you do that. Like I see some songs.
I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it.
I'm like, you know, that needs to change. Composers, I think, need to get credited, because that way maybe all these problems can be a bit solved. But I was wondering, so how much time did it take you to compose Devil Trigger? Oh, sorry, no, Virgin Light, brother.
Ooh, Devil Trigger was 2 weeks, and I felt very happy about that, because I know sometimes songwriters can get into a room and they'll have a finished arrangement in a day, and then they finesse it over a few weeks with production and everything.
Yeah, I don't know
that's pretty much what we did.
That's not my life at all. I don't do that at all.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, some songwriters like to do things all on their own, but some of them like to get together and there'll be like 4 or 5 people in one room, right? Sometimes it's just 3. It's like a top liner. You'll have the guy with the idea, and then you'll have the producer playing some track, and then record. And they'll usually have a song in a day or 2, and then they spend the rest of this time doing all the ear candy stuff. The production guy comes in, they have the arrangement. Devil Trigger took me 2 weeks to get to that point. Bury the Light, however, I was very stressed out. Like I said, Virgil means a lot to me as a character, and I did not want to disappoint. So I think I spent 2 months writing that song.
Damn.
I rewrote that main chorus probably 6 times.
Damn.
Yeah, I kept sending versions to Victor, and I was like, I don't know, man. I feel like I something's not right yet. And the version that I kept was the first version that I wrote. I should have just went with my gut, but I was so stressed out. I know. I was so stressed out that I didn't want to feel like I was phoning it in. It felt right, but I felt like I needed to keep trying. So I kept writing all these weird choruses with other kinds of chord changes and stuff. And I'm just like, no, that's not working. That's not working. And I eventually got to, like you said earlier, what's your main motivator? I started hitting a deadline. I was like, well, if I don't move on now, I will not finish this track. So I picked it, made it the best that I could, made some tweaks, and I moved on.
That is a big lesson, I think, for many composers and musicians. Like the idea of like perfectionism can be a bit of an illusion sometimes. Sometimes, I have a deadline or doing stuff and just making stuff to publish it. Sometimes it's the best thing you can do. The way I see it is like, okay, I'm going to do my best here. And then if there's stuff I can improve, I can do it on the next song. Now, in your case, you couldn't probably think that because this was the song, it was the final boss for the MC5 in terms of like the soundtrack for you. So I totally understand that. But damn, 2 months, okay. That's, I hope people hear that. And
different parts came out at different speeds.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I have a bone to pick with you about your video.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Just one part. And I'm only saying this as a joke. It still falls on my own shoulders.
No.
You were analyzing one part of the track. It was the da 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 da.
Okay.
Like you were talking about how it comes across as Egyptian.
I literally
told Ali. Yeah, I was sitting here. I was like, I like the way this background sounds, but as soon as I add these vocals on it, if I'm not careful, it's going to sound Egyptian. I literally said that.
Really?
And her and Victor both were like, it sounds fine. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to add a harmony then that goes anti against anything that would make it Egyptian. And you added in the harmony that Victor or Ali sang first, which is the perfect fifth harmony, which if you do that, it makes it sound Egyptian. And I was like, no. You only get 2 notes, a high D and an A. So that way everything sounds like it's moving quarterly against just one thing. And you were like, you did this transcription and you did the perfect fifth harmony in your FL Studio thing. Yeah. And I was like, no.
Fuck. I'm sorry, man.
I failed. No. I was trying my best to break that and it still has that.
I think I'm the only freaking nerd who would say that though. Like, people were like, really? Like, can you make it? Because we want to hear why you say it sounds Egyptian. But to me, I was like, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I heard it like, of course, if you transition it to like some traditional Egyptian instrument, maybe. But I heard it more like a freaking epic brass lines, something like that. That will make it sound like you're in the desert sort of thing. But
totally,
I absolutely loved it though. Like I love it when I can take a track and notice so many influences that maybe don't belong together. Like there's a part that sounds like Castlevania to me, and there's a part that sounds Egyptian. One sounds like freaking Pendulum in the vocals, and one sounds like Reptile and Periphery, and those are worlds that have never been blended together in this way. So it kind of makes it way more interesting to me. And that it was, but it's funny. I didn't know like that you had the same thought. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was just another one of those sections that was born out of no electric guitar. So there's an acoustic guitar in the background you'll hear, and it's slightly bending up to that E flat, but not really. But the rest of the track kind of ignores that E flat because as soon as I start touching D Phrygian, here comes that Egyptian sound. Like there's no getting around it.
It's because of the modes.
Yeah. And then the vocals are singing on the A and the B flat. So now it kind of sounds like A Phrygian with D Phrygian at the same time. It's like, if I'm not careful with this. So I'm not at all judging why you picked it up.
It's amazing though, like that, all the level of depth in the music theory that people may not even notice. Like the ears really notice them because like when you listen to music, your ears they notice. But for a random listener, they won't probably guess that you did all that. Thinking of all the modes and the scales and stuff like that. They just hear massive virtual, like, oh my God, yes. But they completely ignore. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, we're essentially, as composers, I think we're magicians. We do tricks, magic tricks, and people don't know. Like, why they're a fucking genius. They just see the magic and like, oh my God. Do you like that? Or would you like people to know more? Like, hey, this section sounds cool because I did the modulation to this key and stuff.
As some people's like, don't peek behind the curtain because then all the magic is ruined kind of thing. I've been trying to find that in music and I still can't find it. Someone will literally give me a score of every note John Williams wrote. I'm listening. I'm following all of these notes. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, that's what he did. He's superimposing these chords or he's using this scale. That's fine. Am I ever going to know when or how to do that at the right moment just like he did? No. The magic is still intact.
Yeah.
It ruins nothing just because I have all the answers in front of me because what he did is not the answer for what you're doing. And it still blows my mind that people still come up with all these incredibly unique and original ideas because it's like, you can hear it. It's music. You can analyze it, especially if you have perfect pitch. You can analyze it on the spot or a good relative pitch. You know what they're doing. That doesn't mean that the magic is ruined.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, that's why music is so crazy.
I think it's amplified because you get a deeper understanding of how much of a genius they are. And you're like, whoa, I know nothing. Again, you go back to that.
Yeah.
Man, I wanted to ask you before, when you were talking about Mick Gordon, you said in the beginning that he prepared you for what was about to come in working on video games. What would you say are the best things you learned from him when working with them?
One of the first things I would say is deadlines. I didn't have a problem with working on a tight schedule or anything. I was already so motivated to have this job that I would, crush my soul into a million pieces and stay up all night, no problem, just to deliver on time, or early.
That's
because if you have fixes, that are inevitable to happen, you have to deliver early. And the next stuff was just production level. At what level do I need to be producing to get this job? So he eventually, after Orchid's theme, we got into season 2 of Killer Instinct, and he was letting me help out more with just lyrics and recording Alley. So I got it to be like, could you help me with some sound design stuff? So I would just pump out a bunch of sound design stuff and send it to him, and he would critique it. He wasn't trying to be a teacher. He wasn't like, all right, Casey, let's take an hour and talk about these sound design things you sent me. It would be like, I don't know, man, your mids sound like they're a little out of whack, or where's the low end, or I don't know, it's a little harsh, or we can't use that. It would be stuff like that, and I'd be like, oh God, what have I done wrong? Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of little moments like that. He let me write for the main boss in Wolfenstein Old Blood, because I think the deadline was too tight for him. He had other stuff to do. And he was like, hey, would you mind writing the main boss theme for this game? And I'm just like, what? Yeah. I said yes, but I knew the answer was like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try, That was my first trial by fire moment. It's okay. It turned out all right, I guess. I wish I could fix it.
Yeah, no, I haven't played Killer Instinct, but I know the soundtrack is very revered, and Wolfenstein, rather. And I know even there, like both games have a soundtrack that's very loved. So I think you did a great job on both. And
thank you.
I think that's usually how it goes too. Many times, the biggest steps in your career, the biggest growth you have, comes from the times where they asked you to do something you were not ready for.
I think one of the other biggest things that helped me was getting access to stems. You can find them already on YouTube anyways. It's like Lady Gaga songs or something like that.
Yeah, from remix competitions and stuff. You still find the archives.
Yeah. So, and there's like Foo Fighters stuff online. You can find all kinds of multi-tracks with like just the drums or just the guitars or just the vocals. And when you start hearing those out of context of a full song, you're starting to be like, oh, this is that's how they're making this bass sound. It's not just like make the biggest bass sound in the world, because that's not going to fit into a full track. All of a sudden, that's where like how to mix starts to make more sense. And I remember early on, he said something to me. I was like, oh, how do you do this? And he was like, well, first of all, what are we talking about here? Sound design or mixing? Because sound design EQ is not mixing EQ. Sound design compression is not mixing compression. That didn't make sense to me until like 3 years later. He said it, but it didn't make sense to me yet. And eventually, the more you start listening to other things and trying to mimic them and explore the ideas of all these effects that you have, then things start to make sense. Then when you hear a sound in your head, like a massive bass, you're going to go home and be like, okay, I need to approach it like this. You don't have the answer right away, but you're going to be trying a lot of these things, stacking serial distortion and compression and multiband compression to control it and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the techniques. It's like being a chef that knows, there's this spice that gives me this taste and that other spice, and that's how you figure out how to. So that's kind of like sound design. I actually had a question for you in terms of music production. Like I have a few, but maybe, I don't know how long we've been talking. Maybe you're going to have to go soon. I don't know. So I wanted to ask you, say the aliens come down to Earth and they're like, your music is too good, humans. We have to take away all the VST effects you created. Like all the mixer effects and stuff, like the plugins for mixing and stuff. We take them away from the Earth. We can only leave 3. And you, Casey, have to decide which 3 are left in the world. So which 3 plugins for mixing and mastering do you keep?
Well, I boil down almost anything to just EQ, compression, and saturation.
Okay.
So for me, I'm going to be reaching for my 3 favorite versions of those things, which right now is Pro Q3, because it's a dynamic EQ and a regular linear phase EQ. I would be reaching for which compressor? This is hard because I love using things like 1176s or LA2As for different things, but I think if I had to go for a workhorse, I might still lean back into FabFilter because their Pro C2 is so flexible. Yeah, there's so many, and even stock compressors are so good these days. But I think if I had to go for a workhorse, I'd be leaning in for my Pro C2. Or just the Pro MB, because then you could do a single band or multi-band. That's hard.
Oh, well, multi-band is better probably. Like it's more versatile.
Yeah,
do you automate like your compression throughout the song? Like for example, you have a guitar and maybe in one part you want this amount of compression on it, in this other part you want this amount of compression. Do you do that like automation on the compression of guitar?
It depends. Sometimes I bounce a lot to audio these days. So what I'll do is I'll set up the guitar sound for this, I'll bounce it. And if I need to do a separate part with different compression, I'll duplicate the track, reset everything, and then bounce that to audio too, so that I don't have all these effects constantly going at the same time.
Okay, I get it. What about the saturation plugin you would keep? Saturn?
As of recently, yes, that is definitely Saturn, because multi-band control over saturation with a ton of different saturation options. Yeah, it used to be Homicide, but I think I'm starting to slowly switch into that Saturn world. Saturn 2 is so good.
This video is sponsored by FabFilter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, FabFilter, hit me up.
No, but they're a very good plugin manufacturer. So you said you bounce guitars to audio around. Like I wanted to ask you, how do you record your guitars? Do you record them clean and process them on digitally through your DAW, or do you record them, distorted through some amp? How do you do it?
For Devil Trigger, I had not yet owned my Kemper, so everything was in the box using S-Gear. And then I literally got my Kemper like a week after I delivered the final files for Devil Trigger. I was so upset.
Damn.
So now I use my Kemper for all of my guitar tones. I eventually want to set it up to where I can do reamping DI for just in case. But at the moment, straight from Kemper into Cubase.
I have my friend that I told you about that is similar to you in the way like both guitar and orchestral, also has a Kemper, but he is having a problem. Like I don't really like the amplification of his guitar in the Kemper, and I would like change that, but he can't because he's like recording directly. Do you ever have that, like when you have to change the sound of a guitar but it's already amplified? Like what do you do usually to fix to post-process a guitar? Do you just like the sound of the guitar out of the Kemper, or do you do some post-processing after? Like how do you do
always
that?
Post-processing. Almost nothing I do does not have post-processing on it. I actually can't imagine if there's anything I've ever done in any track I've ever made if it has no sort of post-processing. Even if I'm dragging in something like a simple shaker loop for a little bit of ear candy in the background, I like to auto-pan it, and I'll get rid of the lows, or maybe even some of the mids. Sometimes it's just all about adding movement into the left and right speakers a little bit. My guitars, I'm always doing something to them. I find the tone that I like on a standalone, and then you have to make it fit into the track somehow. You have to carve out some space for the bass, for the synthesizers, for the vocals. It's just how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I'll keep that in mind. What is something that people don't know about you, but definitely should? Or something you wish people knew more about you?
About me personally?
Yeah, your music or something, like whatever. Like, again, people who are watching this maybe think of you like the DMC boy, but you are a human with many years of life and a musician with so many years of experience and, a taste and understanding that goes way beyond Devil May Cry. So that's what I'm asking. Like, is there something that they should definitely know or that you wish they knew about you?
Probably something that I've been presenting more on Twitter these days, or maybe since last year, whenever Ali and I introduced our first single, Appetite, is that I like a lot of different genres. I have a ton of music on my hard drives that nobody's ever going to hear. Bro, everything from it's just I have like synthwave, I have some New Jack Swing, we have some like R&B that we've done together.
Why haven't you posted?
I need to find a place for it. Everything has to fit. I'm my own worst critic, as most people are. I'm sure you have a ton of music on your hard drives that I'm never going to hear.
Dude, no, I was like that before. Why do you think I'm posting these short clips on Twitter these days? Because I'm trying to fight against the voice in my head that says, don't post that. It's not perfect enough and stuff like that. I'm trying to be like, fuck you, perfectionism. I'm going to do it anyway. And I have to say, I still publish full pieces of music, and I still like to do that. But publishing the short pieces of music has given me so much and has given people so much. Because what I think about is not only, me and my music. I think, okay, this is something that is, definitely probably not perfect. But I know there's people out there who, if they listen to this, it's going to make their day. Even if it's just, 15 seconds baseline or a minute, whatever, and it's not mixed perfectly, still it's going to make their day. And I've seen that. I post this stuff and I'm like, whoa. A friend of mine made a tutorial the other day. And in the tutorial, there's this intro where he walks in his house and he puts some background music to that. And it's like a synthwave track that sounds like Justice and Carpenter and Brute together. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. What is that song? And he's like, I made it. It's a synthwave song. And I'm like, Where can I find it? It's on my hard drive. What? He sent me a song.
Yeah.
It was one of the best things I heard this month. And I'm like, you should totally publish that. And even your stuff that you publish sometimes on Twitter, like the short clips, man, publish them somewhere, because I'm sure it's going to make so many people's days to hear some of those tracks. Maybe it's not going to have the critical acclaim that Buried Alive has, because it's not on Devil May Cry, but still, I'm quite sure it's going to change some people's lives.
Gotcha.
So
I'll try to loosen up a little bit.
Yeah. I understand you though. Like, I'm like that as well. I'm just trying not to be, because I've seen the impact that it has sometimes. To just, that's why also in the Devil Trigger video, in the Buried Alive video, I made that short Castlevania remix. I was just trying to write like, a fun idea. Like, sounds like Castlevania. It's a funny thing. It's a stupid joke that I made. And, it's not perfect. It's like, it's not even orchestrated very well. But hey, I'm going to put it there. I think maybe people are going to enjoy it. And some people lost their shit about that. They're like, oh my God, it really sounds like Castlevania. And people who love Buried Alive and love Castlevania really like that. They don't care, like, it's not equalized perfectly. So
right.
I'm just saying, just do that for them.
Sure. I did share a few things. I think I shared I was doing like a things you may not know about me sort of Twitter thing over a few weeks. I posted, I think the Lost Hope thing that you heard.
Yeah.
I posted a failed pitch for a video game, maybe 2 video games. I didn't want to specify which ones, but I posted them up there so people could hear them. And I think a few of them even heard like, oh, this sounds like.
I think I asked you like many of the questions that people like. We talked about all this stuff. There was like, I don't know, something like 40 questions. Man, you're very popular. Like when I said, when I just asked, do you want Kezi on the show? Everyone was like, fuck yes, dude, oh my God. And when I asked people if they had questions, I had like about 300 questions coming in. I just picked the best ones. And I think we replied to them all. And there's something you want to talk about, we can.
I hinted at this a little while ago, and I'm probably going to talk about it again on my stream on Sunday. But I'm releasing a new song soon. And it's my first time probably releasing something more in the vein of what people would expect, just because it happened, not because I'm trying to make anybody particularly happy, but I had a feeling. It's something I needed to let out. And it's a rock song, some industrial metal, and it features Victor Borba on vocals.
Whoa, the
so yeah, I haven't told anybody this yet. You're the first person outside of Victor and Ali to know this.
Wow,
so
thank you. I feel
I am hoping, I'm hoping to release it soon. Wrapping up some album art tomorrow, and I am going to be finishing up the song very soon as well.
That's amazing.
So December is the hope.
Okay, well, when when this video gets online, I'm going to publish the link in the description, so everyone can listen to the song as they should, because I'm sure it's going to be a fucking banger. Because this time, no one probably told you no guitars, right? You just could do whatever you wanted to do.
Yep, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, okay. Well, everyone listen to the song from Casey and Victor. Random question. Is there a guest you'd like me to interview? You, like some person you're like, oh, this composer I'd like to know more about, blah, blah, blah.
Interview Mick. Definitely interview Mick. The man has more charisma and knowledge than he could probably ever impart in one lifetime.
Yeah, wow.
He's so insightful. Things like, for instance, we always deal with the idea of, is our music successful apart from a game? There's a whole philosophy behind all these things. Would Bury the Light have been successful without Devil May Cry? Probably not. And that doesn't make me disappointed or make me feel like lesser of a musician. It's just we have to understand the coexistence of these two things.
Yeah, I think about that often too.
Like, yeah, I've heard him touch on topics like that quite a bit.
What is your take on that? Like, I believe that it has to do with memories as well. But I mean, Bury the Light is a fucking insane piece. And if I heard it, like there's loads of music that I hear and I'm like, this is fucking amazing. I wish more people knew about it. Then I share it and no one fucking cares. But I also tried. Like one time I tried to share it. Like there's a friend of mine. He's one of my musical heroes. His name is Neurowolf. Or he has like 3 projects. Neurowolf, Neurotech, and Neuroaxis. And one time I shared one of his songs. This was fucking amazing. No one cared. Then one day I was like, okay, hey guys, do you remember Zone of the Enders, the game, like the mecha robots fighting each other? Yeah, do you miss the music? Well, my friend Neurotech right here makes music in the same exact genre. It's original music, but it could work very well on Zone of the Enders. And suddenly everyone was like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. Because they had that link of understanding, like Zone of the Enders, and this sounds like Zone of the Enders. And
Yeah.
it feels to me like music, like the quality of the music is why people come back and they listen and stuff like that, you know? Meme songs on video games like Rules of Nature, Megalovania, they're all fucking amazing songs. So that's why people stay, because they're amazing songs. But
Right.
the memory of playing the game is what is the bait that gets people to buy it.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I think you're nailing it. You get nostalgia eventually for being used to hearing something connected with a visual that you loved. I think that's a pretty easy connection to make. I think you nailed it on the head right there. But then sometimes, like Doom, if you look at their Spotify numbers, that soundtrack is living a very good life outside of the game. But I can't help but think about the same thing that Mick probably thinks about. Is it because people are thinking about Doom when they go to listen to the soundtrack, or would it have done just as well without it? It's a really hard philosophy, because you have people like, Charlie Puth, Dua Lipa, and Taylor Swift, these people at the top of their game. Sometimes they don't make the hit. Sometimes not all of their songs are number one.
Yeah.
Somewhere out there's this kid in a bedroom who wrote a banger that would have been number one for 10 weeks and we'll never hear it. It's just about visibility, right?
Yeah.
Games bring us a lot of visibility.
I think like it's the branding also, like the imagery. Like Dua Lipa, like when I say Dua Lipa, you already think about something. Like you think of her, like, oh, maybe her latest video or her album cover, her style, her personality. Like you saw her freaking H&M advertisement. I don't know. Like there's something there, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably what also helps. Like a brand that as soon as you hear the name tells you something and is relatable. Well, the kid who makes the banger in his room doesn't probably have that. And that's probably the bane of some musicians. And that's what I would recommend every musician to kind of build. Like it doesn't have to be like make YouTube videos, but it has to be something that people are like, oh yeah, I remember this name because it reminds me of that guy. Like my friend that I talk about in this video, his name is Aram Zero, and I'm trying to tell him, dude, make a brand, build a brand. And his peculiarity is that he has this mask that he wears. And I'm getting him to make videos where he plays the music that he's writing, and he shows himself with the mask so that people eventually are going to learn that, oh, Aram Zero is the guy with the mask, and they're going to expect a certain sound. And then every release he makes that carries his name is going to summon that image, and people have the element of relatability that is going to compel them to listen to the music. That's kind of how I feel it is. In a way, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. In another way, I'm like, that sucks because I just want to make music and hope people like it. I don't really want to do all this stuff,
Yeah. No, visibility is very difficult. And I have a lot of respect for people who, like, I have games to lean on, right? Taylor Swift didn't have games to lean on. She built herself from the ground up with a record label eventually. Yeah, but she had to get noticed by them. And I really, really envy people who have the ability to represent themselves as their brand. When people think about Casey Edwards, they're going to think about Devil May Cry. When people think about Taylor Swift, they're thinking about Taylor Swift.
Well,
I think that's so cool.
When I think of Casey Edwards, I also think about, it's a funny guy. Like, on your Twitter, you're very funny. Like, surprisingly, to me, you seemed like an introvert. And I don't know, like, do you think you're an introvert or extrovert or both?
It depends on whom I'm around.
Okay.
I can get pretty noisy and annoying depending on who I'm around. I like to let loose. I have a really stupid sense of humor. Allie knows that. She deals with it daily. I think...
That's what I see. Like, dude, your Twitter handle is amazing. Like, award-losing composer. I'm like, oh, that's great. Like, everyone fucking writes, oh yeah, I want this, I want that. And you're like, oh, award-losing composer. That's great. Yeah. And also the meme you made on like Virgil's Amazon basket with the lights and a hat. Very light. When I think about you, I think of a funny guy who happens to make insane music. And like, I seriously hope people are going to get to know you more and more and more. Beyond just Devil May Cry. After hearing these songs, I'm like, and hearing your orchestral music as well, I'm deeply convinced that we're gonna see you circulate a lot more in the music world. I suppose you want to branch out just video games. Like what are your musical ambitions? If you have some that you're pointing at right now, would you like write a radio hit or something, or write a soundtrack for a film? Like, I know you've done a few soundtracks for some shorts, for example.
I've only done one feature film so far. I think the ultimate goal for me is to be able to do all of that. I know that sounds really selfish, but I can't separate the fact that I love writing pop music or metal. I love doing classical. I love doing short pieces. I love doing long pieces. The one thing I feel the most starved of right now is long-form development. I'm a huge fan of being able to make these motifs or little melodies and then writing 10 character themes and developing this over an hour and a half or a 5-hour, OST experience for a 50-hour video game or something.
Yeah.
That's what I feel mostly starved of right now. So that's what I have my eyes on.
Just
I want to do something that's
get your
big.
music out there, please. Like loads of it. Because I'm sure in your hard drive you must have like stuff. It's kind of like that, and the world just needs to hear it, and I hope it does. Because like when I see someone like you, I'm like, man, like the world needs to know. The level of talent that is in this person. So I really hope they will. And I know they will. I know it's going to happen. And, when you're going to tell me, oh, yeah, I made the soundtrack for this movie or, this soundtrack for this game entirely by me, I'm like, I'm going to be the guy that told you. I told you. I knew it was going to happen, so congrats. But,
right,
man, Godspeed.
To be fair, there are a lot of talented composers out there, including yourself. I've heard your stuff.
Thank you.
And that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night or makes me stay in the studio for an extra hour longer. You know what I'm saying?
I think there's space for everybody. Like for every composer, there's a game developer. I don't think there's a limited source. And composers are always fucking overworked anyway. So
yeah,
there is always going to be space for more, especially people who are getting their creativity and inspiration from so many different sources. Those are the people that make the most unique music. So I think you have nothing to worry about, completely honest. Like, I wouldn't say this to anybody. I'm a person who's very positive and supportive, but still, like, I'm just not talking shit. I wouldn't say this to anybody, to everybody. Like, I think you're one of the most versatile and like unique composers out there. The world just doesn't know it yet. But I think
thank you. And I think if I was to give one last imparting word of wisdom to somebody, I think healthy competition is great. But remember, at the end of the day, we're not against each other. Whenever you're pitching for something, remember you're trying to show somebody that you're not better than the composer. You're trying to prove to them that you're a better version of yourself that you've yet had a chance to show them.
Preach.
That's all. Yeah.
I'm going to reflect on that quite a bit, actually. And thank you, man, for the enlightening words. And it's been fun to talk to you. I hope people enjoyed to watch this interview as much as I had fun doing it. And yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Yeah,
Rock on.
I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Bye.